Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
Well, it's great to be here as always. I love spending a draft Tuesday with you. I think that's a trade deadline Tuesday with you. I think that's the best part of pretty much everything on the league schedule. The deadline is 4 p.m. on Tuesday. I really enjoy being able to talk about it 90 minutes before whatever it is ends. And the trade deadline is one of the best of all for sure. So it's great to be here.
It's interesting because I was telling a story yesterday about when Eric Dickerson was dealt from the Rams to the Colts. And it was shockwaves because the NFL never made it. And nobody in the NFL ever made in-season trades. Now it feels like the baseball and NBA deadlines.
Yeah, it really has become more and more of an event. And I think a good part of that is because, in part, a couple of years ago, you might recall, they opened up the trade of compensatory picks.
Yes.
And what that means is essentially because they don't know the compensatory picks are there until April or whenever it is that they announce that, they're trading speculative picks. You don't know exactly what they're going to get, but you kind of know exactly what they're going to get. And they're free to trade those future commodities for current assets, and that opens up the market a bit. Certainly makes it more interesting. There are more moves that can be made, and there are situations in which you can kind of look back and see the team might have set up that kind of a situation by signing this player, which took them out of the running for this pick, but they'll know that they'll get this one back, which is what I think perhaps the Steelers did with their decision with Melvin Ingram, at least to some degree. There's some insurance there, backed up with draft capital, that if it doesn't work out with Ingram, they have the ability to trade a decent asset that really Ingram signed a 1-year contract to show people he was healthy. And on top of that, I'd imagine his market is going to be worth, I don't think it's unreasonable to say twice as much as the Steelers are paying him if he's healthy and they're in a normal cap year, which they will be. So if anything, I think it was a business decision on Ingram's part to say, you guys aren't going to sign me long-term. You got the $4 million valuation out of me through 6 games. The trade deadline is now. Sorry, this doesn't look very good, but trade me somewhere that I can, get some more film here, try to maximize my value. If this is the direction you're going to go, Alex Highsmith, in my opinion anyway, has played very well the last couple of weeks. He's going to take the yeoman's share of the snaps from here on out. And I think the Steelers know that, which is why they kind of did Ingram a solid and dealt him for something. It doesn't seem like it's much, but you're not going to see a whole lot of players. They have to be Von Miller to acquire more than like maybe a 5th or a 6th. And 6 is probably the typical compensation for a trade for a player at the deadline. You don't see big deals at the deadline like that. It's just not the way the NFL works. But overall, I think I think Ingram is definitely more motivated to want to make a deal as opposed to the Steelers.
Right.
But Ingram, looking out for his future, looking long term, he wants to be in a position to get more film to drive up his value. And this is the part where I think is really interesting with all of it. What Mike Tomlin said at his press conference today, essentially that the cloud over what are you saying is 1-year deals in the NFL are really hard because in Tomlin's situation, he wants volunteers, not hostages. If Melvin Ingram doesn't want to be there, he doesn't want Melvin Ingram there. That's really just the bottom line. And because the trade deadline comes at or around the middle of the season, that's the only time players have to try to make some type of in-season move for themselves, to set himself up for later negotiations. And I think that's really what it was about with Melvin Ingram. I think his situation was very similar to Deshaun Jackson in Los Angeles. All of these things kind of lead me to believe that fewer and fewer general managers are going to want to give out 1-year contracts because really this is going to continue to happen.
Right.
On the player that you would want, the player that has value, they're going to try to set themselves up. And as we've seen, it's getting easier and easier for a player to kind of negotiate his way out of town. And it really kind of the point where a 1-year contract means nothing. I mean, it used to be that coaches were in lame duck status if they had 1 year left in their contract. Now it's quarterbacks and coaches. It might just be everybody now.
Yeah. All right, so Boswell, that was a great play. Boswell with the concussion. So they did sign another kicker today, the practice squad, right?
Yes, Josh Lambo, the former Chargers and Jaguars kicker.
Yeah.
Interesting. The Steelers would want another Jaguars cast-off kicker. That didn't work out so well the last time.
Yeah.
Unless you want to concede that doing that and then having to release him because he just flat out couldn't kick anymore for some reason is what brought on Chris Boswell to begin with. Now, their motivation behind putting Boswell out on the edge and asking him to make an athletic move in order to score points in the NFL, that's a different story.
Right.
For the most part, it's precautionary right now. Mike mentioned that as well. He's on the practice squad, which is kind of the typical thing to do nowadays, make sure that they can clear COVID protocols and get on with practice to see what they'll need to do that week. But if Boswell, who is in concussion protocol right now, if he is not able to go, and then it seems Josh Lambo, the talented veteran, he's been around for a little while. He's a solid kicker. I'm not exactly sure why he got released. You never quite know with kickers unless it's Josh Scobie. But by and large, kickers have a reason for not having a contract. But there are a good amount of kickers, and there are only 32 jobs. So many times you can get a quality kicker who adjusts well to what you guys do in terms of your special teams and can kick in the stadium in which you're playing most of the time. You put that together like they did with Boswell, you got yourself a nice investment. A guy like Lambo, maybe that just didn't work out for him, but clearly they were right on that move. They made it about the time you think that they would, and while it doesn't rule Boswell out exactly, it's good to know that they are going to be prepared this week with a backup kicker at least, which is something I think they might wanted to think about perhaps the previous week a little bit more.
Right. Okay. Why have some things fallen into place? Is it something strategic or is it schedule? Why is it fallen into place?
I think that's an excellent question. And to be honest with you, what I see is a team that has generally checked the boxes that I thought that it would at this point. They're just maybe doing it a little bit ahead of schedule compared to what I thought. You've heard me say this 1,000 times. I expected them to be about 7-10 this year. Right. They're a couple weeks ahead of the pace that would put them on. Now, I'm not giving them, a playoff spot, 9-8 record, 10-7 record. I'm not there yet, but the offensive line has gotten progressively better the last 4 weeks. There are still some problems there. Poor Dan Moore, which is what I'm calling him now. I mean, he got if he wasn't baptized by fire before, he certainly was on Sunday. And really, I think he's doing a great job for the situation that they're putting him in. He's not supposed to be in that situation, though. I think Tomlin addressed this to some degree as well. I like how he's responding to that. And I really like what they're doing in the run game. We're starting to see them really get after their opponent. They're playing with a level of confidence that we did not see from them early on in the season. They're getting better, and it's been really fun to watch. We saw they were mangling Cleveland up front on a couple of those drives. Yeah. They did a great job. They outrushed the Browns. If you would have asked me last week who was going to have more rushing yards, I would have laughed. There's absolutely no way the Steelers are going to outrush the Browns. And they beat them pretty handily in that regard. Neither team had huge success on the ground, but Cleveland was way below average, and Pittsburgh was above their average. It's coming together. I think we're seeing better things from them overall. That was just a crazy game. I mean, I don't know how many times you put those situations together. I don't know how many times the Steelers, with what they had, pull out a win. But it was great to see the heart that they played with. They didn't give up. They had every reason to give up. They didn't have a field goal kicker in the second half. They didn't have a kickoff guy. Everything bent Cleveland's way, and they should have been able to make that work. But they get a timely forced fumble. They make plays on critical downs. They shut them down pretty good on third downs. I wouldn't have expected that out of the Cleveland team. Cleveland gained like 110 yards in their first two drives. You thought they were just kind of cruising along. They were going to do pretty well. Pittsburgh's defense really stepped up and did a great job. The offense made the plays they needed to make. Pat Freiermuth, another player that I was critical of in the offseason, he's playing above board more consistently now. You can expect more from him in all phases of the game. Got a great effort from Zach Gentry. I would have guaranteed you that guy wasn't going to do squat this year. I didn't even think he should have been on the roster. I didn't even pick him to make the team.
Right.
They've done an excellent job. I would point to coaching. He's kept the team believing in themselves, and he's built up their confidence to the point we're seeing much better play out of them, I think, than what's reasonable. They're not as good as in many cases as what they're playing, but they're starting to put stretches of that together, and that's going to make them better the more they get into it. We're still going to see ups and downs. It's still a very young team. Mm-hmm. This is a critical stretch. The Bears are not particularly good. The Lions are really not good. They need to go 2-0. This is, I think, the first time this season you could honestly say they better win both of these games. They will be pretty sizable favorites in both of these games, and they're going to need to finish, really what they've started right now. And if they do that, though, they've got a pretty good shot at things. You have to like where they're going to be.
And your thoughts on the rhythm that we're seeing now from Matt Canada as a play caller?
Yeah, I think overall what we're seeing is more of that variation than just his script. Beyond the first 15 plays of the game, they're able to do more deeper into drives. They ran, the jet action, the jet sweep motion that they'll run. They ran that in the fourth quarter. I don't think they've really done that to a point this year. It kind of seems like they sort of throw that out and do the things that they typically do that they know the best. Their playbook has expanded. It's been an offense that they've wanted to get more guys involved. There was a point, I think, it was funny to me because usually when you scroll through the stats during a game, you see a pretty long list of the Steelers' targeted receivers. Ben likes to spread it around. He tries to get everybody some looks early on in a game. This time there were like 7 guys that had carries in the first half of the game. They're doing a lot of different things that are not necessarily foreign to them as a team anymore, but the defense hasn't quite seen a variation of it the way that they did it. That's what experience gives you, and that's what, in my opinion, the real talent of a play caller is one who's able to stack different permutations of everything later on. You have to be conscious of what you've called. You have to be conscious of what another team has seen and put in different wrinkles of it, not just during the game, but before it. You have to know that they've seen this look before, so we're going to do this time, and then come back to this later on, but do this time. I think Canada's done a great job of that up to this point, and really it's not something we've seen a whole lot of from the Steelers offense in the last couple seasons, probably. So it's been fun. He's keeping it he keeps it just with enough variety that you're not sure what to expect. And that half-second hesitation that you can cause a defense to have to take is the difference in a lot of cases, especially with, when you've got, it was called back on a hold, but when you've got Ray McLeod who goes around, the far end, outflanks the defense and picks up 20 yards. If the pursuing linebackers are not frozen for a second on that exchange, there's no way he's getting around that corner. Right. That's the key thing with play calling and design that you need to do. If you can get that extra delay on the part of a defense, you're going to be able to exploit the situation. I think Canada's done a great job setting them up to do that now. And probably more than anything, he's gotten a sense of buy-in from everybody in a variety of different packages. They're not making mistakes the way that they were. They're still probably penalized more than you'd like to see. Not that the officiating was, optimal Sunday, but you didn't get a whole lot of those, silly preparation types of mistakes that we saw in mass quantity early on in the season.
I'd ask you about the Bears, but what can you say?
Here's the thing with the Bears, and we've talked about this with the Bears. The Steelers don't beat the Bears. This is no joke. The last time the Steelers beat the Bears was when Jerome Bettis trucked Brian Urlacher at the goal line.
Yeah.
That's how long ago it was. They're 0-3 against the Bears since then, and they were favored in all 3 of those games. They played them a Monday night back in 2013, and he got the doors blown off. The Bears killed him. Jay Cutler went crazy that night for some reason or another. a really bad team in 2013, certainly starting off. One of the many big losses that they had early on in that season. 2017, the last time they played, it was I don't know what that was. That was a dumb game. 2 holding penalties in overtime.
Yeah.
Jordan Howard scores a touchdown to win it for Chicago late. Steelers were, I think, like 9-point favorites in that game.
Right.
And back in 2009 was an upset as well. Just if I recall, and maybe there's somebody out there listening that would know, but if I recall, I think Santonio Holmes dropped like 5 passes in that game. I seem to remember that. This is way back in the day. They don't play their best against the Chicago Bears. It's that simple. It shouldn't be the case every time, but it continues to happen over and over again. This is one of the few teams. I meant to look this up. I wanted to blow you away with my stat knowing power here, but I don't know how many NFL teams Mike Tomlin has not yet beaten in his career, but I know that Chicago is one of them. There can't be many more than Chicago.
Right.
So you hope that they can bring the same type of effort that they've put out the last few weeks, and put together a nice little run for themselves. We'll see, though. I'm not willing to just write off any opponent for this team this point of the year. Where they are, they're going to have to get better in practice and in the film room each day leading into a game. They're not good enough to write anybody off yet.
Well, we never write you off for good reason. You're brilliant. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you very much.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, guys.